I would like to welcome the audience to the February 14th, 2023 Parish Planning and Zoning Board meeting. Would you all please stand while Mr. LaSalle Williams says the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance?
Dear God, we thank you for allowing us another blessed day. Forgive us our sins and our shortcomings and make us fit to serve. Thank you, Lord, for this board. We thank you for staff. And we pray for those who come tonight to seek our decision. The Holy Spirit guide and lead us that we might do that which is right in your sight.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Christie, would you please call the roll?
Chair Kirk Smith,
Here.
Vice Chair Julia Dickerson,
Here.
Miss Latricia Cobb, Mr. Keith DeBrock,
Here.
Miss Sharon Galicia,
Here.
Miss Janelle Hyatt, Mr. Art Little,
Here.
Mr. Jake Porche,
Here.
Mr. Carl Vincent,
Here.
Mr. LaSalle Williams,
Yeah.
and Miss Deanne Whining.
Here.
Thank you, Christie. This is an 11-member board. It will take a majority of those members present to grant or deny any request heard tonight. The chair will refrain from voting unless that vote might affect the outcome. The meeting will be conducted with me reading the requests from the agenda. The planning staff will give a presentation and report their recommendations. If the applicant would like to add to the staff's presentation, or if someone from the audience has comments, please come to the microphone and state your name, address, and the nature of your request. All persons wishing to speak other than the applicants need to fill out a blue request to appear form located in the back of this room. The form must be given to a staff member prior to the reading of the agenda item. As required by the board's bylaws, in all cases, the proponents will be limited to 10 minutes. Opponents will be granted 10 minutes as well, with each speaker allowed no more than 3 minutes. I recommend that a spokesperson be selected if there is a large group wanting to speak on the same agenda item. If 4 or more speaker request forms are submitted, the time allowed for individual speakers will be limited based upon the number of forms submitted. The chair has the right to limit speakers who present redundant information or personal attacks. In unique situations, the chair may extend or the board may vote to extend the time allotted for speakers. After discussion, the board will vote on each request. I will announce the decision of the board after the vote. The exceptions are final tonight. This meeting is being filmed by the Calcasieu Parish Government Channel and can be viewed on Wednesday and Thursday following the meeting. For additional run dates, check the website at www.calcasieuParish.gov. Channel 5 in Lake Charles, Sulphur, Moss Bluff, Westlake, Vinton, DeQuincy, and Gillis. Channel 99 in Carlos and Grand Lake. Please either turn off or silence all electronic devices. Take appropriate action to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of January 17, 2023, Planning and Zoning meeting. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Motion by
Second.
Ms. Dickerson, second by Ms. Hyatt. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Exceptions. Take appropriate action on the following application. 2690 West Highway 90 in Ward 4. Exception to allow a 6-year extension of an existing borrow pit. The applicant's Daniel Perry Edux. This is case EX-0123-0164. I will entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Made by Ms. Dickerson, second by Mr. Dubrock. Ms. Dunn.
This property is located in between Sulphur and Benton at 2690 West Highway 90 near Shoe Peak Road area. In 2006, the applicant received zoning approval to expand an existing pond from 2.5 acres to approximately 10 acres with the condition that the digging be complete within 4 years. In 2016, the applicant came before the board and received approval for a time extension of 3 years to complete the pit. Currently, the pond is not complete, therefore the applicant is requesting an additional 6 years. Because minimal impacts are to be expected, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the following conditions: that the development must be in accordance with Section 26-122, 1F4, X through XII of the Parish Code of Ordinances, and that Pizze Road and Shoe Peak Road shall not be utilized for hauling.
Thank you, Ms. Tunn. Does the applicant have anything to add to this presentation? If present. Any comments or questions by board? There being none, all those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There being none, the motion carries. Take appropriate action on the following application: 4,000 block of Houston River Road in Ward 4, exception to allow an industrial development, railroad, and rail storage yard. Applicant Sprint Rail Partners LLC. This is case EX-0123-0163. I will entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Cobb, second by Ms. Hyatt. Ms. Tunn.
This property is located off of Houston River Road, northwest of Westlake and northeast of Sulphur. The applicant is requesting to allow a railroad and rail storage yard, which will consist of numerous tracks designed to store approximately 2,100 rail cars and to be developed in 3 phases. Sprint Rail Partners intends to preserve a 50-foot natural buffer on all sides of the site except immediately adjacent to the KCS Railroad. The actual rail tracks on the proposed site will be approximately 60 feet from all property lines. The undeveloped areas of the site will remain grass or gravel. Because the proposed development is consistent with the character of the area, the staff recommends the request be granted with the following conditions: that the development adhere to the site plan on file with the Division of Planning and Development, provided that the director or designee may authorize adjustments to the site plan in light of technical or engineering considerations discovered during development, that a runoff management plan will be required unless appropriate waiver is granted by the Division of Engineering, and that permitting is subject to approval from Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development. Also uploaded on your tablets are letters of support, opposition, and there's a petition.
Thank you, Ms. Tunn. We have lots of blue cards. Opposition, okay. We'll start with the applicant, represented by Josh Norzatsky. I hope I didn't butcher it.
And Mr. Chairman, as the applicant makes his way up, prior to the meeting, as you and I discussed, and I discussed with all of the speakers, except maybe for a couple of them, we've kind of modified the rules a little bit. The applicant and the others in favor of the project have decided to divide their time with Mr. Nowitzki taking the majority of it. The opponents, of which there are many, are going to be limited to 2 minutes apiece, and then there will be a 3-minute rebuttal.
Okay, 3 cards. Step up.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, can you all hear me? My name is Josh Narodsky. My address is 9938 Chemical Road, Pasadena, Texas, 77507. So I'm the president, CEO, and one of the partners of Sprint Rail Partners. And so what I wanted to do is explain to you exactly, I know there's been a lot of misinformation. I wanted y'all to hear straight from me exactly what we're planning to do, why we want to do that, and the needs for this going forward. So we are a family-owned company, and so I understand, I'm from Houston, live in Houston. I understand the being around that industry, and we want to be good neighbors. We have several companies we have experience doing. We have several companies that we have several companies where we experience issues with environmental. We have a trucking company, we have landfills, and we understand that we want to be good neighbors to our community and do the right, appropriate thing. So Sprint Rail Partners Our goal is to build a rail storage facility. And I know there's a lot of different interpretations of what that means, but I want to be very specific on exactly what we're trying to do. So currently, with the expansion of Sasol and the other industrial facilities in your area, there's a lack of rail storage. And there is a map, I don't know if we're able to put that map up, that shows basically where not that, the one that has the houses on it and the existing rail storage yard.
You're talking about this one?
Correct. Does
It's
everyone
not
have that
uploaded
hand
on
up?
the-
Okay.
It's uploaded on their tablets.
Okay, perfect. So that to me is really the real story. So again, there's a lot of additional storage need for rail cars with the expansions of Sasol and some of the other industrial plants that are happening. What you can see is on the southern part of that map, there is already an existing rail storage yard. There's no more space. That storage yard is full. There's no more room to store these rail cars. And so with the expansion and everything else that's happening, we are going to need more rail car storage. The main product that's being produced at that plant is plastic pellets. So I know there's a lot of stories what's happened in Ohio. I do want to be very, very clear that this is not anything like what happened in Ohio for several reasons. One is that primarily we're storing empty cars and plastic cars. We are going to have some chemicals, absolutely. There will be hazardous chemicals. But the vast majority of the cars that are going to be stored at this site is going to be empty plastic pellet cars and cars full of plastic. The reason being, and so the next question that I would have is why here? Why do we want it here? Why do we not want it 20 miles away or 50 miles away? And the reason is this location being immediately north of Sasol allows us to connect through the Sasol plant so that we can actually interchange and be a parking lot for their cars. You don't want these rail cars, all these incidents that you see, like in Ohio, there was one in Houston actually this week as well. All of those happen on the main line. These derailments, all these issues, the reason why they happen on the main line is because the speeds of the train, everything else that's happening on a storage yard, we're limited of a max speed of 10 miles an hour. We normally never exceed 4 miles an hour. We are not switching, we're not doing crazy movements. We literally are a parking lot for these cars to sit. So Sasol, in order for them to keep making all these plastic pellets, they have to have empty cars ready to come. If we put this 20, 50 miles away, what'll happen is the KCS, Kansas City Southern, and all the other rail companies, when they bring the cars in, if there's not room, they will actually show up at the site. The site itself can hold over 1,000 cars inside of Sasol. If there's not room for the incoming cars, they then are going to have to ship them outbound to this site if you wanted it, for example, 20 miles away, before they could actually bring it back. So by having it right next to the site, I know that you're actually eliminating a lot of the extra rail movements and you're making your community safer. You don't want, or you want to limit, in my opinion, as many movements on the main line as possible. And by having this site directly north of Sasol and connecting into it, it allows us to serve where all the train cars coming in go immediately to this parking lot. And again, the speed of being less than 4 miles an hour when you're switching, that's industry standard. And that's just a very important feature. The other thing, we do this, we've had several past experience of operating these. So our director of rail operations has been doing it for 49 years. We have 0 derailments, 0 spills, 0 issues. The next 2 senior managers on our team have been doing this for 60 years. Same record. No derailments, no issues, no incidents. The reason for that is primarily the safety protocols that we follow, and also the speed of how this happens. I mean, these trains are, the rail cars are large. When you're going 4 miles an hour, you're just not going to have these issues. The other concern that I know I've heard in the community is on operating hours. We are not a 24/7 operating facility. We do not want to be a 24/7 operating facility. So you're not going to have noises at 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock or all these things like that. We don't do that at any of our other facilities, and we do not plan to do that here. Are there occasions where we might have to go a little bit into the dusk hours? Yes. Those would be on holidays, like on a Friday where they're off on a Monday and you have to get extra cars in and out of the plant. But for the vast majority, every other site we do, we are not operating 24/7. So we do respect the community. We don't want to have the noise violations. We don't want to have the light violations, or the light pollution. We're not going to have all these lights pointing up and everything because we're not operating at night. We have lights on our locomotives. Again, we're a parking lot. We're not doing a whole lot other than pulling the cars in when the trains come and then parking them. The last thing that I really want to point out is, this number of 2,000 cars comes up. We fully intend to do as many cars that are needed for that site. I want to be very clear on what our intentions are. On day one, we're probably going to only build 500 to 1,000. I don't know the full need of the rail yard because I can't project everything that's going to be coming. And so I say that we wanted to be full transparent of, if I put as many rail cars as possible, what would that look like? Because I felt like that was the correct way to represent it. What I didn't want to do is say, here's 500 cars and we're going to keep adding another 500 and another 500 and another 500. And so I wanted to be very transparent. And again, we're a family-owned company. We want to do what's right. We're going to be honest. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to go over that. With my remaining time, I would like to turn it over to David. He's the lead engineer from LJA. He builds these railroads for us, and he's been in the industry for 40 years and can speak on the safety of Sprint as well as the rail storage yards in general.
Mr. Chairman, as the next speaker comes up, there are about 2 minutes and 45 seconds left between the last two speakers in favor. However, I was distracted with blue cards a second ago, and I didn't hear who made the motion in the second for the minutes. Did we still have that?
Cobb and Hyatt.
Cobb and Hyatt. Cobb motion, second by Hyatt. Thank you. I'm sorry.
My name is David Harris. My address is 3600 West Sam Houston Parkway South, Houston, Texas, 77042.
And Ms. Harris, you have a minute and a half, okay?
Okay. I am the president of LJA Rail Services. We design and build and operate, in some cases, rail yards just like this. I've been in the business over 40 years, and the railroad business over 40 years, and I can tell you that in all of that time, I have never heard of a leak, an explosion, anything like that in a railroad storage yard, and that's what this is going to be. It's a parking lot, like Josh said. It has nothing to do with being on a main line. So, and then we also, one thing that I wanted to point out is that we work under Federal Railroad Administration rules and regulations. We'll have a fence around the site. We'll have inspections as the cars come in and the cars go out. It's a very, very safe operation. And that's really all I had to say.
Thank you. Jonathan Dean. General comments.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jonathan Dean, and I'm with the Southwest Louisiana Economic Development Alliance. Address is 4310 Ryan Street in Lake Charles. I just want to make a general statement. We've always felt that this piece of property has been best served for industrial use. We've, in the past, attempted to get this site certified, and we know this decision is ultimately up to the board, but we support industrial use for a company that's a responsible corporate citizen that's going to take care of the community, be active in the community, and promote economic development and make the community better. And that's really my statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Gabb, did we add 3 additional blue cards?
I do not know how many we added, but we're going to stick with the 2 minutes apiece, okay?
Okay. With the blue cards we have in opposition, as I call you up, you'll each have 2 minutes to address us. Ed Oliver.
Yeah, I'd like to, first off, did I
Name and
hear you
address for the
correctly?
record, sir.
I'm Ed Oliver. I live at 3013 Guillory Road, Westlake.
Thank you.
Right before the meeting started, we were told we couldn't yield our time back to each other. Is that true? Because I just heard y'all yielded y'all for, he was able to yield his time to someone else.
I'll pause the time for a second to answer that question. And obviously, this is a time for public comment with 2 minutes. The answer is no. You cannot yield time to somebody else. We have 2 minutes per speaker, and that's what's been allotted here.
Right. And that was before we added 3 additional.
That's correct.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I strongly oppose this. You know, we live at a different time now. This is not like it used to be. The noise level is going to be tremendous. I just want to say I strongly oppose this. You know what could happen. It is happening today some other places. And I just don't want to be there, if you follow my meaning. I live right across the street. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. James Prater? Prater?
I'm James Prater. Live at 3700 Houston River Road. And this gigantic rail yard that nobody in the area wants or needs is a bad idea. This rail yard will be a terrorist's wet dream come true. The rail yard will have thousands of rail cars with every kind of dangerous chemical known to man, because every industry is going to bring stuff in there. Dangerous terrorists like Nazis, Proud Boys, ISIS, jihadists, Al-Qaeda, or lone wolf nuts, etc., 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 will have a very nice target in a non-moving train yard where everything's right there. We have enough bullseyes in Southwest Louisiana. We don't need any more. The explosion doesn't get you, the gas cloud will. And if you've been paying attention to the news the past few decades, you know it's not when that terrorists might get us, it's when it might happen. Also, accidents happen no matter how safe you are. So in the end, vote no for this. And some of you might say, well, industry brings billions to the area. Well, I never got any of these billions, and none of my neighbors have either. So then if you vote yes, then you can have my little piece of paradise and my neighbor's little piece of paradise, and then you can put up a parking lot and put all the trees in a tree museum. But no, you have the power to stop this, so please stop it and vote no, do the right thing.
Thank you, Mr. Prater. Let's see. Tammy Cole?
My name is Tammy Cole. I live at 2780 Evergreen Road. In fact, most of the pictures in your packet for this hearing is things that I submitted. I'm speaking for me and my mother, who's 93. She lives on 3605 Houston River Road. And everything that these guys just said, I'd like to believe it. I really would. I've got a paper that I'm going to read from, but I would like to say nobody's going to monitor, or who is going to monitor what is in them rail cars. They can say one thing, a year or two from now, it can be a totally different story. If somebody makes them an offer to put something in a rail car, I would imagine it's going to be in it. And we already have enough problems. We can't sleep around there at night. These trains are, in fact, you would not believe the dust that comes off that gravel parking lot from Sasol. We're predominantly south wind. Everything we have is covered in dust. And it can't be good. My mother has lung problems, and she's on oxygen. You probably saw her on TV the other day. And it really is a shame that things like that are going. These guys are from Houston. we live in this neighborhood, and not by choice anymore, but I'll tell you what, anymore, it's flooding our land. It's, they built a parking lot over there, they're gonna create a bowl, we're gonna have gravel parking lots to the south by the rail car, and that thing is small compared to what they're doing. The noise, the flooding, the dust, there is no, the lighting, you can see the lighting in those pictures, they just shine all over our property. We heard this story before when industry came out there. Y'all, we're hearing it again. We can't take any more out there. We can't. We can't survive with this going on. And I'm not joking. I mean, we've been here all our lives, y'all. We reside in this area. They're from Houston. It's not gonna bother them from Houston. Build it in your yard, not mine. We are barely hanging in out there with the Sasol project.
Thank
And
you,
that
Ms.
rail
Cole.
track is 300 feet from my house, and there is nothing but the shaking of the ground, clanging, banging.
Thank you, Ms. Cole.
I believe y'all get my point. Thank you, sir.
Amy Richard.
Hello, my name is Amy Richard. I live at 2922 Guillory Road. This proposed rail storage yard is located 1,100 feet from my doorstep, which is less than where we stand now from the front steps of the Civic Center. And there are other homes even closer to this. I oppose this industrial development for several reasons. 2,100 rail cars containing and storing some of the most dangerous hazardous chemicals known to industry should never be permitted in such close proximity of where people live. After reviewing the application documents submitted by the owner, the suggested conditions by the staff, and having firsthand knowledge of the multiple attempts to rezone this exact property as heavy industrial in the past 3 years, there are still too many unanswered questions. What safety and security measures will be put in place to protect the nearby residents who live there and travel Houston River Road every day? A 50-foot buffer of already hurricane-ravaged trees is not a means of protection. Is this storage yard being built on top of the existing pipeline is there? Has that been addressed? Will there be air quality monitoring system in place prior to storage of these hazardous materials? Will there be additional emergency sirens? As I understand it now, we haven't had any sirens in place since the hurricane 2.5 years ago. How will we be notified of chemical spills, leaks, explosions, evacuations? Can you assure that sheltering in place protects us from any harm that we would get from these chemicals? And if you can't, can you assure us sufficient time to evacuate? Question number 4 on the application says that it will not be a nuisance to the area because of odors, vibration, unsightly areas, or unwarranted elements. That is all of those things. We'll have constant noise and hazardous chemicals next to us. It's definitely unsightly. All of those things should be yes and not no. The value of our properties go far beyond monetary. In recent years, our properties, the properties of our family, the way of life have been significantly impacted and diminished by Sasol's world-scale facility
Thank
and
you, Ms.
energy's
Richard.
expansion.
You've reached your time. Thank you.
I'd just like to say we're entitled to the protection that y'all provide to us, and we ask you to please consider the people who live there when you
Thank
vote.
you, Ms. Richard.
Thank you.
Glenda Lejeune.
Glenda Lejeune. I live on 3022 Summer Place Drive, Sulphur. And a lot of my concerns already being addressed by everybody who's done a good job. But, you know, they get up here and they promise us of what they're going to do. I do not think, in my opinion, that they can promise us that we will not have an explosion like Ohio. We will not have a leak like Ohio. We have I-10 bridge and I-10 interstate. If we have an explosion or a leak, it will shut down. It is just not about us. It is about Lake Charles, Sulphur, Westlake, all the surrounding areas within a 20-25 mile area. We have a leak like this, folks. It's not just in our neighborhood. It's going to affect everybody. You know how it is to for the bridge, the traffic that's on it now. Think of if we have this kind of leak or an explosion, what it'll do. It will shut it down. My other concern is there is only a 50-foot buffer zone on Houston River Road. That road is heavily traveled. If you are traveling on Houston River Road and you have a leak, chloride, this vinyl leak they had, vinyl chloride and chlorine leak, it will kill you. We have family, we have friends, and again, it's heavily traveled. And it's not just us that it's going to affect. It will affect you. It will affect our air. The water was infiltrated. It will affect Calcasieu River. It will affect anything from the runoff of Calcasieu River. This is what Ohio is dealing with. We are begging and pleading with you to not pass this, because something they're making so light, and it is not. They want to say it's just a railroad.
Thank you, Ms. Lejeune.
yard.
You've reached your time.
Thank you.
Pat Bradley?
My name is Pat Bradley. I live at 3626 Houston River Road. I would like to address anything but Sasol and that area from Sasol to the railroad tracks on Houston River Road. My concern is the thousands this will affect, and it's probable something's going to happen. We don't know when. He did not state what hazard material would be in those cars. We have a nursing home down the road. We have the the Methodist Children's Home just down the road. Highway 27 is heavily populated. What is going down our section of Houston River Road is traveling at warp speed, people. It's dump trucks, 18-wheelers, you name it. My concern is for all of y'all, because not one of y'all will probably not have a loved one within this 20-25 mile area. It is lethal. My husband died a year ago. He retired from Sasol. He was an operator. I'm quite aware of what is produced there, and what is produced at Citgo, and what is produced at ConocoPhillips. And it's all going to be in one area. It will be a domino effect. It will take one car, just one car, and it's going to go on down the line. We live here. These landowners and business people do not live here. We live here. We asking y'all, please. Our property is worth nothing right now. And when they finish with it, we'll have nothing left. We'll live in a desolate area. Please take into effect not only our loved ones, but all of you guys' loved ones too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bradley. James Hyatt?
James Hyatt, P.O. Box 7262, Lake Charles, Louisiana. There's just a few things I wanted to address here. I would love for every industry that comes to this area to come and be a family-owned company and be a good neighbor. The fact is, we have explosions and we have problems all the time. That's just the risk of doing business. That's what we're told. The flare that goes off all the time, well, that's just what we have to do. You just have to put up with this, right? That's not true. We don't have to put up with this. You are the body that can decide what happens with these people's houses who are right there, whether or not this rail yard comes in. It's just plastic pellets is what he's telling you. It's only just plastic pellets and empty cars. That's not going to be true. They're going to put whatever cars are available. Has there been alternative sites looked at? Does Sasol have enough land to put their own rail yard? Why is this body the one that's in charge of saying whether or not the zoning? I'm not in control of how the police jury works, but I mean, how well advertised was this for people to know what's being proposed after what's going on in Ohio? And to say that the side rails never have any kind of issue, Fisherville, about 1.5 miles from here in North Lake Charles, from 1983 until 2000, had several just rail cars on the side leak and spill and kill people. You know, they cause cancer. This is not some like unheard of thing that happens. And so I think that's important that you understand. It's not just what you decide today is going to impact for a long time. And I don't think you should take it lightly and just decide in this short amount of time something that is obviously very dear to so many people who live here and care about this area and care about their family and your family. So please be a good neighbor and let's push this off, defer this, or better yet, just squash it. Let's not have this right here. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hyatt. Cindy Robertson. Cindy Robertson.
I'm Cindy Robertson. I live at 624 West Verdine in Sulphur. My family lived on Houston River Road right across from where Ollie's used to be. If y'all know where that is, you know that my mom and dad moved in over there and that was our family home. So I'm very familiar with Houston River Road. I don't remember your name, with LGA Rail Services, the reason you probably don't remember there being any
Ma'am,
major
address the
leaks at a-
board.
Pardon?
Address the board.
The reason he doesn't remember any major leaks at rail yards is because this happened in 1981. So that was before the 40 years that he's been having experience with the railroads. And we have members from the North Lake Charles community who were impacted by these leaks in that rail yard. So it is a very definite danger. I was on a call this morning with community members from the folks that are being affected in Ohio, and the thing that they said was most distressing was that there was no emergency hazard plan in place. And I don't see one anywhere in this exception rule that says what is going to happen if there is, God forbid, a leak of hazardous materials. And, you know, he's saying most of them are going to be empty. I would like to know, and y'all should probably want to know, what percentage are going to be empty. And you should probably also ask what type of chemicals are going to be in those. We all know that the stuff that makes plastic is not good for us. And the runoff from that area, I saw that maybe there was going to be a plan in the future as to how the runoff was going to be handled. That needs to be figured out ahead of time, not afterwards. If there is a leak and it gets into the Calcasieu River, we're just adding insult to injury for all that happened with Bayou Den.
Thank you, Ms. Robertson.
You're quite
Thank you.
welcome.
Maurice Tynes.
Before you punch my clock, I'd like to wish all the ladies in the room happy Valentine's Day and wish all the gentlemen good luck if you didn't get your significant other. Candy and flowers. I looked up and thought about it. Ladies and gentlemen, I was employed by this group to
Name and address for the record.
to come and speak even though my office address is 4839 Isles Road. But back in the day, I lived off of Bankins Road, and I was through where Sasol's got their plant many, many days and nights, back and forth, back and forth. I'm very well familiar with this neighborhood in question. That's probably not why they got me. That's probably because I'm real cheap. But anyway, they got me, and here's what my problem is. This exception is illegal as requested. I saw Wes smile because he knew I was going to say that. I think he's already figured it out. The exception that they're depending on says railroads. The United States is full of lots and lots and lots of rail yards. One that I found the most interesting was one in Los Angeles, where Long Beach has successfully sued Los Angeles to stop a $50 million rail yard because they felt it was too dangerous and not appropriate for that area. Although railroad is permitted in that area. So I can tell you, one way or the other, we're going to get a legal decision. I hope you all will go with me here and decide it's not legal because the word railroads, which is in the A1 agricultural zoning area, simply does not include railroad yard. There's rail yards, there's freight yards, there's sorting yards, there's all sorts of yards. You can come across case after case after case across the country and in our state where yards have been involved, but not railroads. It's a completely different situation. It's like you okayed parking lots. Guess what's in parking lots? Cars. How do cars get in parking lots? On roads. So now you authorize the interstate highway to come right where the parking lot was authorized and say, well, yeah, that's an exception. My concern is these folks that are making this exception request ought to have enough moxie, enough legal backing.
Thank you, Mr. Tynes.
Pardon?
You've reached your
My time's
time
up?
limit. Yes, sir.
I didn't think I'd have enough time anyway, but thank you all very much. Appreciate your patience and your kindness and your generosity and your courtesy. I'll see y'all in court.
Mr. Morosky? No, we're done.
Okay, so I want to address a few things that were brought up. One is on anything with hazardous emergency response plans will be approved. We will have a plan that will be approved by the permitting and everything else. With the water runoff, that does have to be approved. Part of it is we don't know until we go in and clear the site and do the engineering work of exactly what that plan is going to be. But it has to be approved by the permitting and everything else. Like that has to happen. As far as, I know that no one here knows who I am. I know that I live in Houston and I don't live here. But I really do want to let everyone know I live in Houston next to the chemical plants. Like, I do understand. I understand that I'm an outsider. I've been around chemicals for a long time. I understand what it is. I understand what it's like to be a good neighbor. And if you're looking at this map, all the rail that I'm putting in, honestly, doesn't put, my track isn't any closer than track that's already next to these existing homes. I'm not putting any chemicals on any part of this that's not already there. All I'm saying
No
is
comments.
anything that's coming in here is going to be something that's already being on that track. And by putting it right next to Sasol, just north of that, it actually is going to make it safer. You don't, like, if the fewer cars that you're having running up and down the main line, it is better. You don't want that running up and down the line. You want to keep it, the safest place for any of this stuff is to be in a storage yard where you're able to move at 4 miles an hour, not any faster than that. Everything on the main line, you're going faster than that. You're going 55, 60 miles an hour. That's where all these incidents occur. The siding that everyone talks about, that's still a main line. Siding and main line, it's all about the FRA regulations, what the speed is on that rail. Our speeds are extremely low. That's really what makes it safe. They design these cars to be safe. Now, I understand incidents do happen. That's why, again, I know y'all don't know who I am. We are a family-owned company. I care about what we do. We want to do the right thing. We personally will walk every inch of that rail every single month, and we do an inspection. Just because there's an FRA regulation, we go above and beyond everything for safety and regulations that require us to operate effectively, efficiently. But our number one priority is safety. And it's not just something that I'm saying. You can look at all of the other entities that we have, and we do value, one, community, two, safety. We have an impeccable safety record. We haul for every major Fortune 500 company, and we do that because we are a safe company. We care about what we do, and we want everyone to go home safe, and we want to be a good neighbor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any questions for us?
I do.
Mr. Vincent?
Okay, first question is, you're gonna be building this in 3 phases, and I looked around there's a lot of apparently woodland on the west side of there. Do you know if there's anything, or Wes, you might know, is there anything planned to be built there now? Because of your phase situation, you've been talking about what's stored.
Turn your speaker on, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? Okay, I'm sorry. My first question was, there's a lot of woodland to the west of this proposed site. So if you're gonna be building in 3 phases, is there anything planned or on the, that's gonna be going into that property there?
The property adjacent to it?
The property adjacent to it?
We don't have any, excuse me, we don't have any, anything that's been submitted into our office for that property to the west. Excuse me.
Okay, next question might be for you too.
Okay.
After looking at some of the pictures, and you said you can't do it yet, but I do question a drainage study, because when you clear it, it's gonna build up more water. It's just gonna happen. And my last part was, another lady said it too, what about spill precautions? What's the plan if you do have a spill? Where's it gonna go? How are you gonna pick it up?
Correct, and we will have a spill prevention plan for that site, which will be in federal regulations approved, as also the permitting and zoning will be approving that as well. But it's key, you have to have exactly what you're saying on the runoff. You are correct, and that's exactly why we don't have one. When we clear everything, we have to understand where the water is. If we need a detention pond, where is that detention pond? All those are factors that we want to consider to make sure that when we do this, there are safety precautions put in place to mitigate any incident, God forbid it ever happen.
Scalise?
One of the concerns was the trains coming through at all hours of the night. Will this rail storage facility increase the amount of trains coming through?
No, our rail facility is going to reduce the number of trains going on the main line. We are not going to operate at 24/7. Like we operate during normal business hours. So
No 2 a.m. horns from you guys?
Correct, no 2 a.m. horns. Normally horns are only used at crossings. The only crossings that we're gonna have are going on and off the Sasol plant, so we're not gonna have a lot of horns on that either. So most of our stuff is gonna be, there's a bell, there's a brass bell that you ring when you have people or personnel within 20 feet of the railroad track. That's that's pretty much everything that you're gonna hear is gonna be the bell ringing. We're not gonna be blowing horns. And if we don't do this track here, these cars are coming in and out of Sasol. They have to. That's how they operate. And again, their storage, they're limited on how many they have. And so if we don't have this here, if you put it 20 miles away, you're actually increasing the rail traffic on that line every day.
Is Sasol the only facility you're going to service from that storage facility?
The Sasol, Lyondell are the main ones that we're connecting to. That's where you get the main advantage of taking traffic off the main line. So we can connect to the KCS. We've not talked to them yet, but we can.
Ms. Winey?
Yes, I think it was Miss Amy Richard. She brought up some really great points. I didn't have a chance we were going pretty fast, so I didn't have a chance to actually write down some of those questions. But one of the things and I think you brought it up about the emergency plan.
Yes, ma'am.
So help me out with this. So why don't you have an emergency plan that you could actually elaborate on for us to be able to present to the people in the community?
Okay, so I can elaborate on what an emergency plan would look like. When you do one of these, I think it's very important to understand it's a site-specific plan. You don't go pull one out of a binder and say, this is our emergency response plan. So by that, I mean, it's going to be very specific on exactly what chemicals are going to be there, whether it's plastic, empty, or chemicals, where the tracks are laid out, where if we have a retention pond after we clear, when you have where the water runoff is, all of it is very specific to how you design the site. You then design your emergency response and your prevention plan around that site. You want a site-specific plan. So can I elaborate on the plan that we submitted? I can, but there's several things that we don't know until we get in and do the full engineering to understand where the water is going to be, where it goes. That will determine, like our site plan is not just, we're going to put a boom and do this. It's going to be very detailed on exactly, based on our site, how we're going to mitigate it, and if anything does happen, what our response is and how that happens. Does that kind of answer your question? I mean, it just has to be very site-specific.
That does. I get it. So if just by chance, if this was not to pass, what would be your alternative, for you as a company? I mean, is there some other location or for what you're proposing?
So again, any other location in our study is going to increase rail traffic, and it doesn't serve the purpose in our opinion. By increasing rail traffic, you're basically increasing everything going through and right next to River Road. By putting it right next to it, you're eliminating traffic from that main rail line. So did we look other places? We've done studies in other places. Again, we do this at other locations, and you need to have it right next to the plant. That's the most efficient and most effective way to do it. The further away you get, it creates more logistical nightmares.
Any other questions?
And getting on and off the main line is the biggest risk of doing that. That's what you're trying to avoid.
Mr. Little?
In regards to operations and construction, if it's approved tonight, how far away are you from operation?
Our goal would be to be operational probably Q1 of 2024. The construction doesn't take a whole lot of time, to be honest. Once you get the clearing and we get the environmental study and understand the hazmat plan and everything else, then it doesn't take that long to do construction, sir.
Yeah, the majority of your time is spent in getting all your paperwork together.
Correct, absolutely. The majority of your time is. It's in permitting, it's you want to get it right, and you want to do it one time, yes, sir.
Is there any maintenance done on this yard? Is this a maintenance shop?
Oh, no, sir, not maintenance. There's maintenance done on the rail to keep the rail intact, yes, sir. That's part of every 30 days we walk every inch of the rail and we do inspect the rail.
As far as
and
the
we'll do
cars
maintenance.
themselves, you have nothing,
No,
any
sir.
kind of maintenance
No,
to do
we
on
don't
those?
do, and we don't do repairs at any of our other facilities, nor do we want to.
Any other questions?
We do inspect every car, and if service has to be done, we let the customer know, and then they're responsible for getting it fixed. And it does not leave until, it would go back into the plant and get it fixed there, basically.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Oh, no, for the staff.
The staff, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is this is the property that came before us a while back in regards to rezoning with the Stream Estate?
Yes, sir.
Why the exception to the zoning instead of rezoning? I'm just trying to understand the difference between that
You're talking about
rezoning and that
state.
exception.
He's asking why we're doing it as an exception and not a rezoning.
Well, under the current code, the ordinance that you have, when the police jury set the particular uses in the ordinance, when they adopted it years ago, railroads was in A1 as an exception by the board. That's how they set it up many years ago, back in the early 80s. So it's been that way for many years.
What's a railroad?
I'm sorry?
What's a railroad?
A system of rail tracks.
Of already asked
system
our
of
attorney.
tracks? Okay. This falls into a system of tracks?
I believe so. It's a set of rail tracks, railroads.
Any other questions of the staff? Comments? Mr. Porcher?
Zoning map that I have on my tablet, can you place it on the screen? Just want to make sure. So the property in question to the south is heavy industrial, correct?
That is correct.
And that existing rail storage is in that heavy industrial zoning?
The existing one, yes.
Inside the
That's correct.
The existing, okay. And then all around to the east and then around to the north, kind of surrounds this little pocket of still A1.
That's correct.
I just, I try, for me, I try to simplify things because I have to think simple. Just the appropriate land use. There are, when you're surrounded by heavy industrial, and it sounds like everyone here is already experiencing the impacts of that. But for me, a continuation, and the reason we try to stay consistent, I would have much more of an issue if someone was here trying to expand the R1 zoning in this area than to allow heavy industrial expansion in a map that's mostly zoned heavy industrial. That's just for me, part of my thought process. I'm still thinking, but I would have more of a problem allowing expansion of R1 than allowing expansion of heavy industrial.
Any other questions or comments from staff? Being none, Ms. Christie, roll call vote.
Ms. Dickerson?
Yes.
Ms. Cobb?
Yes.
Mr. DeBrock?
Yes.
Ms. Galicia?
Yes.
Ms. Hyatt? No. Mr. Little?
No.
Mr. Porsche?
Yes.
Mr. Vincent?
No.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Winey?
No.
6 for and 4 against.
Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is to advise that the next regularly scheduled planning and zoning meeting will be held Tuesday, March 21st, 2023. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Dickerson, second by Ms. Winey. We are adjourned.